Good evening, everyone, and welcome to our public meeting. This is a council meeting to host public meetings on matters requiring approvals under the Planning Act. Before we begin, members of the public are advised that only specific stakeholders, including the applicant, the minister, public bodies, or a specified person as defined in the Planning Act and/or the registered owner of any land to which the zoning bylaw or official plan amendment could apply, may appeal the council's decision to the Ontario Land Tribunal. Further, if a person or public body does not make oral submissions at the public meeting or make written submissions to the Corporation of the City of St. Thomas before the amendments are passed, the person or public body may not be added as a party to the hearing of an appeal before the Ontario Land Tribunal unless, in the opinion of the tribunal, there is reasonable grounds to do so. Those wanting to be notified of the council's decision on any application should email customer service at customerservice@stthomas.ca indicating which public meeting they wish to be notified on and providing their name and address. Those who do not have access to a computer and wish to be notified should call customer service at 519-631-1680 and hit extension 0. Provide that same information. Do any of the members of council have any disclosures of interest concerning any of the matters on this agenda? Seeing none. Madam Clerk, what method of notice and when was the notice given to the public for these meetings?
Your Worship, notice was provided in the St. Thomas Times Journal on Friday, February the 6th and Friday, February the 13th, 2026. And in accordance with council policies, notice was also mailed to property owners within 120 meters of the subject properties.
Okay. This public meeting, the first number one is Center Street rezoning bylaw amendment. I'll call the first meeting to order and advise the public the following. This first public meeting is required by the Planning Act to afford any person an opportunity to make representation with respect to a proposed zoning bylaw amendment to permit the development of 2 townhouse blocks and 1 block of stacked townhouses containing a total of 24 dwelling units on lands located north of Center Street between King Street and Church Street. I'm going to introduce our Manager of Planning Services, Michelle, who will provide background information on the proposal and present the draft bylaw. The floor is yours.
Thank you, Your Worship. Yeah, so we're here tonight for the public meeting for a draft zoning bylaw amendment for a property on the north side of Center Street between King Street and Church Street. An application for the zoning bylaw amendment was submitted by Strick Baldinelli Moniz on behalf of Matt Janes Consulting. And I would also like to point out that the applicant, Paul Hines, is here from Strick Baldinelli Moniz, and Matt Janes, the property owner, is also here, should there be any questions for them as we go through the public meeting.
Great.
So just a little bit about the subject site. The subject site right now is it's currently vacant. It is located, as I mentioned, on the north side of Center Street between King Street and Church Street. It's immediately adjacent to the entrance of the elevated park. Right now, there is some parking that people do on the site for the elevated park, though it isn't a formal parking lot. And there also are neighbors that use the site for access. In the planning justification report, though, I would note that it indicates that they'll be working with the neighbors to allow for continued access as the site redevelops. The subject lands are 0.33 hectares, 0.32 of which is developable. So a little bit about the subject lands. Just here's a couple pictures of the subject site looking east and west. You can see a picture of King Street, and you can also see a picture of Church Street, which goes from Talbot Street and then terminates before you get to Center Street. So just a little bit about the surrounding area. To the west is the elevated park. To the south are some low-rise residential dwellings. To the east, immediately east, is a vacant privately owned site. Also, sort of to the northeast are apartment buildings. To the north is a mixture of residential and commercial uses. It also includes 2 heritage designated resources, including the Mackenzie House at 86 Talbot Street and the McKay Mulligan House at 76 Talbot Street. This is the proposed site plan. So the zoning bylaw amendment application is for 24 townhouse and stacked townhouse units. What's proposed includes 3 blocks for these units, 2 6-unit townhouse blocks, and a 12-unit stacked townhouse block. Parking is proposed off the rear, accessible via Church Street, so you'd come from Talbot Street down Church Street. I'll go through the variances later, but what I will say is that from the consultation process till now, the applicant did work with city staff to move the parking to the rear, because in initial iterations, what we saw is there were multiple driveways off of Center Street, which created some concerns in terms of the safety of pedestrians, knowing full well that this is planned to be a future multi-use trail. So, the applicant worked with staff to make it safer for pedestrians on Center Street and move that parking and access to the back on Church Street. So the official plan, in the official plan, the subject lands are residential at 75 units per hectare, which is the density that is proposed. They're at the upper end of the medium density residential criteria. So effectively, when we review them, we have to look at the medium density residential criteria in the official plan, which talk about proximity to Talbot Street, which this site is in about a 200-meter walk away from the lands designated Talbot West. We look at, proximity to transit. The site is about a 5-minute walk from a bus stop, along with various other features. We look at landscaping, buffering, et cetera, through the site plan process. As this is 24 residential units, it would be subject to a future site plan control process, should council proceed with the pass the proposed zoning amendment. I would also note that the site being adjacent to two heritage designated resources, they will be required, staff are recommending, should it proceed forward, that there be a holding provision, that a heritage impact assessment be completed prior to any sort of development proceeding on the site. This is because the official plan talks about, and the provincial planning statement both require that there's no negative impacts to adjacent heritage resources. So that would need to be proven through the heritage impact assessment and also dealt with through the site plan. And then also there has been a phase 1 and phase 2 environmental site assessment done, which did find some metals in the soil. So consistent with the official plan, there need to be a holding provision for a record of site condition prior to the site being developed. A little bit about the current zoning. So the zoning currently is the 4th residential zone. Permits a variety of residential dwelling types, including townhouses, apartments, but it limits the number of dwelling units to 6 per lot. And I will point out that this is regardless of the size of the lot. You can have a very small lot, very large lot. If it's zoned R4, there's that 6-unit limit. So the applicant is proposing a site-specific 5th residential zone. They're requesting variances of the minimum lot area per dwelling unit of 135 square meters versus 185 square meters, a reduced front yard setback of 1.7 meters compared to the 6 meters that would typically be required. I would note that did come out of the discussions with city staff where we worked with them to move the parking to the rear. A reduction in the minimum required parking. They're proposing 1.12 spaces with the justification being provided about the proximity to the downtown, proximity to transit. Also, a variance would be required for permitted projections of stairs going in the front yard, and also to add stacked townhouses as a permitted use. In our bylaw, stacked townhouses actually aren't one of the sort of standard permitted uses we see in a zone, but in many instances we've added them with the definition because recognizing that they're kind of now a form of development that we see. Staff are proposing in the bylaw that the range of uses in the site-specific R5 be limited to townhouses and stacked townhouses as built forms, just because of we recognize that in the R5 zone it's quite permissive, so you could get a development that's totally different than what's being proposed. So that's why staff are suggesting these sorts of limitations so that anything built would align with what we see. Similarly, it's likely that we'd be proposing a provision to not allow driveways on Center Street, just to further make sure that we're getting what we're seeing. And then also the provision that Center Street would be recognized as the front lot line for the purpose of applying all the different setbacks. And then, as I mentioned, also the holding provisions are proposed for environmental remediation and for heritage conservation in terms of providing that heritage impact assessment before development could occur. So just I'll walk quickly through the draft zoning bylaw. So effectively, it would be to add the new zoning map with the H1, H2, R5 special provision. So yeah, there'd be the area affected. The only permitted uses would be the townhouse dwelling and the stacked townhouse dwelling, and also home occupation. So people could continue to do their home occupations in those dwellings, similar to other residential locations in the city. Uses accessory to the foregoing, adding a definition for stacked townhouse dwelling, having the minimum lot area that they've proposed is included there. Same with the minimum front yard setback, minimum number of parking spaces, establishing Center Street as the front lot line, the stair projections I mentioned, and also requiring that stacked townhouses would be subject to the same provisions as townhouses, just because since it's a definition we're adding, it's not something we have typical zoning standards in that zone for. And then just exceptions being those provisions that would that are being proposed to be varied would not apply the base provisions. Then also adding the holding provisions for environmental remediation, requiring the record of site condition. And then also heritage conservation and providing the heritage impact assessment, demonstrating that there's no negative impact to the adjacent cultural heritage resources. And then also updating our general zoning bylaw map. So this is the draft map of the proposed amendment. And then here is the applicant's proposed amendment shown on the broader zoning map. Any questions?
Before we get there, I have more to do. Madam Clerk, have you received any written submissions on the proposed changes?
Your worship, we've received 2 written submissions. The first one from James Hughes expressing concerns about density and parking. The second from Jen Varga expressing concerns about privacy, disruption to electricity and water supply, traffic, property values, and density.
Okay, thank you. I'll now ask council if they have any questions of Michelle. Go ahead, Councillor Clark.
Thank you. The R4 is 6 units per lot, and you flashed up there the red area and then it disappeared to the next one. I'm just wondering, is this considered one lot, or is it going to be, is it considered more than one lot?
So through your worship to Councillor Clark, it's considered one lot.
Okay, Councillor Kohler.
Thanks, Your Worship. I guess just a kind of a statement at the start too is that this is a public meeting. I know a lot of people here think that we've already made a decision on this and that we're the sole authority of approving or making this happen or not happen. So at the end of the day, even if council votes this down, there's opportunity to go to a body above us that could overturn our decision as well. So just so people know that when they're posing their questions. So this parcel, is it already under the ownership of the developer, or is it, because I thought TBR or a numbered company and I think the Elevated Park actually owns some property, or is that further down from there?
So through your worship to Councillor Kohler, it's my understanding that this property is owned by Matt Janes Consulting Limited. I'm very certain of that. And there's adjacent other lands that are owned by Number Company and TBR that are nearby the subject lands.
Okay, now so some of that property, would that be sufficient for, and then maybe Matt, because I know Matt's part of the Elevated Park too, so maybe he'll speak later as to what his plans are to maintain parking for that asset, and then you know, the impact of that, and then also how this will impact, or will there be provisions for the Trans-Canada Trail to still go, maybe even use the back parking area if that's going to still be in there. But just concerned about, we've had some pictures handed to us from a member in the gallery that we've looked at, and you can see that quite a bit of parking there on some days where it's stacked up. And if we're going to be taking away from there, what the plans would be from that, because it certainly would impact the viability of the park if nobody can park anywhere around it to get to it. So hopefully he'll speak to that later on. But that's my concern. And you know, some of the other things that you've talked about that will be dealt with through site plan, the heritage aspect of it and things like that, and hopefully help deal with some of the privacy that will, from their concerns. But parking is certainly a big issue.
Councillor Herbert.
Thank you, Worship. Thanks, Michelle. Has there been a traffic study done I'm assuming there's going to be an increase in traffic on that street. Has there been a study done?
So through your worship, there was a traffic study done. It didn't find that there were significant impacts for the traffic. It's adding 24 units. It didn't find any, it didn't flag any concerns. It was, it found it to be appropriate.
Councillor Clark. Councillor Raimo to follow.
It's one, my question before was, to find out whether it was one lot, and it is. And when I look across to the north of the site, there is 8 lots. And if you look at the south, the homes on the south side of Center Street, there's 9 lots. So if this property, if the applicant had to come forward and asked to subdivide this large piece into kind of a typical lot size in the neighborhood, on one of those lots, according to R4, he could then have built 6 units on one lot. Is that correct?
So through your worship to Councillor Clark, that is correct. However, it would, there's certain setbacks and lot requirements that may need to be met in order to fit those 6 units.
Right.
But I think, given even our additional residential unit provisions, et cetera, you could have 4 units as of right on most of those lots, had they been built out like that.
Right. So in fairness to the applicant, depending on which way they've chosen to look at this, the number of units would be fairly similar if you took this large lot and subdivided it into a typical lot. So I just, I want to be fair to the applicant and the neighbors, but if you look at it that way, it's not out of range for what the neighborhood could look like or did look like in years gone by, before, say, even the railroad, if those lots were a typical lot. So that was just my observation. Thanks.
Yeah,
Mr. Pompili?
Through your worship, just a couple of comments. No, that's a very good point, Councillor. The properties could be subdivided and permit probably similar amount of units overall. If they were subdivided, though, you lose your ability to dictate parking at the rear. So parking would then have to be, and driveway access would most likely be all through Center Street. And that's, in working with the applicant, that's what we were trying to avoid, was to eliminate the driveways on Center Street. And there was a comment earlier I just wanted to reiterate about the trail. The trail won't be relocated along the back driveway. The whole purpose of this is to maintain that trail will be along Center Street. And with the design that's before you in this proposal, the trail won't be interrupted by driveways. So it's a lot safer. So I just wanted to make those couple of points.
Great. Councillor Raimo?
That was my first question, was about the trail. So the trail will continue along Center Street in the front. So then the stairs of the front of the house will come to the trail?
I believe they're set to go to the property line. Perhaps Mr. Rietzma may be able to speak to how far back the trail is planned to be set from the property line.
Yes, thank you. So just to confirm, you're asking the front doors or the Center Street front door access to the trails? Yes, so that would be some sort of staircase down to the public trail, or it would look like a sidewalk more or less, having the proper setbacks that you have the correct staircase height and risers.
I have another
Please go ahead.
question. Just that we're already reducing the lot size from 185 square meters to 135, so that's small. I'm just, wondering why the middle block would be 12 units instead of 6, like just to keep it consistent and then just to help minimize some of the density?
So through your worship, so the applicant has proposed stacked townhouses, I think just to get more units onto the lot. They have shown, that they fit parking to accommodate those they've shown in the rear. So I think, they're staying within the height limits, but of the zone. But yeah, it was my understanding just to get more, they're proposing it so that they can get more units on the lot.
Go ahead.
Another one, just my concern about parking. When you look at the elevated park and how many people park there, and by having, 1 point whatever assigned to 1.7, I think, anyway, parking assigned to a unit, a lot of people have 2 cars. So, now you're going to have 24 units and you could potentially have, 36 cars. And people are going to end up parking on Center Street. So my concern is just about the density of parking. And then if you've got the summer and you've got people coming to the elevated park with no place to park, is the road going to be, parking on both sides?
So through your worship, to Councillor Rymal. So in terms of the parking, the applicant is proposing 1.12 spaces per unit. The bylaw requires 1.25. But, we do allow the opportunity for them to justify reductions. In this case, they've pointed to the proximity to the downtown, that it's a walkable area, they're near Foodland and close to transit. But in terms of the parking for the elevated park, there's nothing compelling a private property owner, nothing requiring them to have the parking on that lot. It's not a formalized parking lot, so it's challenging for the city to refuse the zoning bylaw amendment on the grounds of parking for the elevated park when it's a private landowner and it's a residentially designated and zoned property.
Just one more, then who owns the elevated park?
Yeah, on track.
Councillor Wookie.
Thank you. Archaeological possibility, I know there was a railway, but in front of that, this is a very old, I'm sounding like my colleague Steve Peters sitting in the same chair as him. This is a very old part of St. Thomas, one of the oldest parts. And I don't know, we do things for indigenous artifacts and things such as that, but now we could be looking at something that goes back over, literally 200 years. And I don't know where does archaeological start, in terms of time frame, and is there responsibility to do this up front, or is this something and no offense, you start digging and see what's there, and if you find something, then we have a slowdown. So that's one, and I have another quick one after that. Thank you.
So through your worship to Councillor Wookie, the applicant did provide a stage 1 and stage 2 they've completed stage 1 and stage 2 archaeological assessments. They provided an acceptance letter from the ministry indicating that the assessments were satisfactory and that no further archaeological investigation is required.
Thank you. Then just my last one is just the only thing that scares me a little bit is, but the R5, you said it's very permissive. And so could you just reiterate what you said about how that we put some goalposts around that, so that, let's say, for instance, the proponent decides not to develop it, someone else comes in, it's got the zoning sitting there, and they say, well, we want to put something else quite different on that land. So if you could just go over again what the goalposts are for that. Thank you very much.
Yeah, no problem. So through your worship to Councillor Wookie, so effectively the R5, you can build an apartment building, and that apartment building could have a much higher density, whereas townhouses are capped at 75 units per hectare in the R5. What's being proposed is 75 units per hectare, the 24 units on the site, so that's already at the maximum. And by limiting the form to the townhouse and the stacked townhouse, and also, if we do move forward, including a provision that would prohibit driveways on Center Street, we're really restricting their form. They'd be seeking those reductions in setbacks, et cetera, to fit on the site. But by limiting the built forms that could be constructed, and also by adding a provision to prohibit driveways on Center Street, between those two things, we'd be helping to secure the form that we're seeing in front of us.
Councillor Wookie.
Thanks very much. Last thing then, is, let's say it didn't happen, someone else buys it, we say, no, you can't do that because of what you just said. Is that appealable to their tribunal And if it is, are we going to lose that one? Or, I mean, we can do all we can, but when it gets appealed someplace else, like it would make me feel much better if that's something that generally is not appealable to the tribunal.
Yeah, so through your worship, to Councillor Wookie, based on the OLT's appeal rights, it would only be the owner that could appeal along with other public bodies, et cetera, and other listed bodies. But there's 20 days to make that appeal after council passes the zoning bylaw amendment, or after council makes a decision on a zoning bylaw amendment. There's 20 days for the appeal period, and then after that, the zoning is in force and effect. Furthering that, if they wanted to add a different use, if they wanted to add apartments, if they wanted to change what was on the site, by adding a use, typically we require them to go through a full rezoning rather than a minor variance process. So then it would have to return to council if they so wanted to do something like that, would at least be the recommendation from staff.
Councillor Herbert.
Thank you, Worship. I'm just going to piggyback on Councillor Rymal's comments because I should have probably asked that the second part of my question. When you do the traffic study, do you actually come in on a Saturday and Sunday and see all those hundreds of cars there visiting the overhead park? Because it will be a nightmare for sure. There's no, Center Street's not a big street anyway. It's not even like a 2-lane almost. But anyway, I just wondered, how do they do their traffic studies for parking when there's parking?
So through your worship to Councillor Herbert, they do an analysis of the number of proposed units and the number of proposed trips they plan to be generated. But the parking for the elevated park, because this isn't an actual parking lot, formal parking lot for the elevated park, and there's no, yes, it is used like that, but it's someone's private property. They could come in and they could get people ticketed if they so chose for being, or towed away for being on their property if they so chose to enforce that. So it's challenging. It wouldn't be something that the traffic study would look at. It is a concern. It is definitely a concern. It's a concern that we've heard from the public about where people are going to park for the elevated park. But it's challenging for us to require them to provide it as just out of the goodness of their hearts as parking for the elevated park on their privately owned property.
Go ahead, Jim.
Thank you. Just to follow up, I'm sure when the elevated park opened up, the assumption was people park right where they're parking and where they want to build. That's the assumption. It's not the elevated park's fault that they want to decide to build there. But anyway, I can see the concerns on weekends for sure. It's just not going to be a pleasant sight with all those cars trying to park on Center Street and jamming in on the corner. I mean, we'd have to have a traffic bylaw officer down there every weekend sorting it out. So anyway, thank you.
Further questions from council? If that's all we have for now, council can of course raise hand and come in at any time, but we'll now go to the public. And we have both public in the audience. And if you would like to ask questions or make comments, John in the corner with his microphone will be where you'll go queue up, and we'll take you in what order you go there. We have a number of people from the public online with us tonight too, so I'm going to try and alternate back and forth between questions. If you are online and would like an opportunity to ask a question, if you're using your computer, tablet, or smartphone, please click the raise hand icon. And if you're calling into the meeting using a telephone, please dial *9. The questions will be taken in the order that they come in or as best as we can. We'll start with, we've got a question in the gallery, so we'll start there. Please, when you come to a microphone or when we allow you on and unmute you on the online version, please give us your name and address first and then ask your question.
My name is Sue Fortin-Smith, and my address is 180 Talbot Street. I live in the old shoe factory just down the street from this development. I will let you know that I'm a retired registered professional planner of the Ontario Professional Planners Association and the Canadian Institute of Planners. I also, besides being having a master's in community planning, It's also in social impact assessment and public consultation. I personally think this is a terrible plan. I think that it's land use related, but it doesn't consider the integrity of this, the oldest section of St. Thomas, with all its magnificent still heritage buildings that are maintained, but that are constantly being eroded by decisions that are made in council. And many times it's not your fault, it's because of bylaws. I did throw down to Jeff Kohler a map of this area so that the ones that didn't realize what the area looks like could look at it. I want to bring to your attention that 24 units doesn't sound like much, but 24 units is a lot. I live in a building that's 27 units, and by the way, there are at least 40 cars and maybe more, but we have a big parking lot behind the social services building. When I moved there 5 years ago, we had, of course, the town towers. Between those two buildings, I don't know, we could have 80 apartments. I don't know the number there. Since I have moved in, we have put 28 apartments above the social services building on Talbot Street. We have done the Idwell development, which has 45 units. There's a renovation being done at Queen and Talbot. I think it's Queen and Talbot. That's not done yet. That has no parking. We have parking. The Barry Estates, for those of you that know it by that name, on Walnut Street, just up from the old St. Thomas Church, has been approved for 100 units. Right now, there are only 25, a quarter of them have been built to date. And you should see the number of cars just for that one component of that development. Beside it, the nursing home that was burnt down was bought up by those developers. And I don't know if they've been approved for apartments or residential. So when you start taking all these numbers into account, you think, where is the quality of life in my neighborhood that existed even 5 years ago? The West End's becoming a dumping ground for more and more apartments. I'm disturbed that the proponents for this bad plan owns the elevated park. They've been parking on his land, and now he wants to build on his land and forget about where all these elevated park people are going to park. Now, because I live in the neighborhood and I have a dog, I walk around there all the time. For good traffic, that traffic study must have been done in a snowstorm in November, because that is the busiest place going during the good weather. And I'm yappy, you can see that. And I've talked to a lot of tourists. The elephant is a big attraction for people from India because they have sacred things related to the elephant. And so they go and visit the elephant, they go to the elevated park, and some might even go over to St. Thomas Church. The congestion in that area has gotten out of hand in those good months. If there's a problem at the elevated park, well, the roundabout gets shut down, Old Talbot Street gets shut down, and there's all these cars, that's right now, stuck in that area. King Street shouldn't even be called a street. It's like an alley with very bad paving. Old Talbot Street is a disgraceful mess considering that our major attractions are in those areas. And when you think about it, and you think about this is our oldest neighborhood, it has big attractions, where is the quality of life for the residents of that area? Because my quality of life has been deteriorated. I mean, I had to do a little worrying when they had an explosion in the new Idwell building, and when they had a tenant do 30,000 damage in the social services building. And then when you think, well, we're just going to add more, and on top of wanting a zoning change, not even meeting the minimum standard for parking, I mean, what kind of a plan is this? And I would even I think we used to call it the Ontario Municipal Board, but it's changed names so much, I don't know what it is now. I'm 77, I have a good excuse for my laxness. Anyway, the trail, I'm glad to hear that there might be room for that, but we'll see if that actually happens. But I would want to think that you don't just think about the land and building something. It's even how that fits. How does it fit into the heritage? Are they going to, I mean, when you look at that, I'll call it a picture that I sent with the old homes in that area. Do we want to destroy all of that in our heritage? Anyway, I've taken up too much time, but I was born here and I'm just getting very depressed at the way things are moving. Oh, and also, there are a lot of children in that neighborhood. And if you try and tell me that the elevated park is a park for children, forget it. Because if you're a mother with a stroller and a toddler, there's no way to get up to that elevated park, and there's no swing or slide or all the things. I have a 6-year-old grandchild. So there's no playground for a child unless they get all the way over to Wellington Street. And there's no little parkette even. I mean, if Matt Janes wanted to do a good thing for the city, he would build a nice park on that piece of land. That's all I have to say right now.
Right. I'd like to go to one of our online listeners. I see a list called attendees with someone with their hand up, but I don't have that on my screen.
Hello,
Hi, who do I have? Give us your name and address.
my name is Stan Gillum. I live at 30 Center Street.
Perfect. Give us your thoughts.
My thoughts are, because having lived here for 9 years, seeing the wildlife that goes through this field, I'll miss that. But my bigger concern is our end of Center Street was supposed to have been finished by the end of last October, yet it wasn't. I'm wondering, was it stalled because of this application?
Great. Kevin's coming. Okay. Mr. Dilivek, our chief engineer, will answer that question.
Thank you, Mayor. So the Center Street in the church, Old Church neighborhood, was never part of the Center Street Phase 3 reconstruction project. It had always stopped at Stanley Street.
I never pointed that out for the 4 years I followed it, waiting for it to happen. It never ever said the west end ended at Stanley Street.
Well, it may not be that the west end ends there, but the construction project on Center Street, is that what you're saying?
Yeah, the construction.
Kevin, was as far as Stanley Street on this era of construction.
That's
Okay,
right.
well, it didn't say that over the last 4 years. And we have blind spots on Center Street at Stanley where it's still only a two-way stop. But if you're eastbound on Center, you have to already be in the southbound lane of Stanley before you can even see if anything's coming on the northbound lane. I don't understand why that hasn't become a four-way stop. I mentioned it to a police officer 3 years ago. He said he'd bring it up. So that aside now, so when is Center Street going to be finished, or has this been put off because of this project?
Planned construction on further on Center Street, Kevin. I don't think it has to do with this project, but when would that be in our list of other projects?
In our list of needs through the mayor, As mentioned previously at another meeting, Old Talbot Street reconstruction is the first domino that needs to occur to provide us the storm outlet for the rest of the reconstruction within this area. That first domino is scheduled to take place in 27 or 28, and it would help provide some water servicing over to Northwest Area 2 and 3. The Center Street project that I was referencing earlier did provide a large diameter water main to help provide the water for this area as well. So that's kind of the process that we'll go through in order to get into the old church neighborhood reconstruction.
Thank you.
Okay, so you're saying that our reconstruction of Center Street is dependent on this new set of complexes going up?
Nope. I don't think that was said.
Okay, no, here, let me ask a different question. Because, I mean, this end of Center Street, we don't get the services they get everywhere else in town. You don't get the snow removal, you don't get the sidewalk snow removal, you don't get the salting like the rest of the town gets. If we're lucky, we get it a week or two later, but other than that, it's a good thing I have four-wheel drive. So now you're telling me that you're going to put in this assembly of units across the street, and then we're still all going to be having to own four-wheel drive vehicles to get out of our properties to get to work or doctor's appointments or whatever?
I don't know the answer to that.
Well, you should know the answer to why we don't get snow removal.
Well, I'm going to give you the chief engineer on that problem.
Through the mayor, the MMS requires a certain level of service. So these roadways are likely class 5 roadways, which requires a response within, depending on whether it's ice formation or snow accumulation of a certain threshold. And I could go through our winter maintenance records, but I'm pretty sure this area does receive winter maintenance in accordance with the legislation.
No, you can actually go through those records, because I've seen me driving through a foot of snow on Center Street. Well, Talbot is down to just being wet. And we've only seen a sidewalk plow through our area of Center Street 4 times in this winter year. So I've seen lots of snow plows go up and down, sidewalk plows go up and down the street, but actually on the sidewalk, no, maybe 4 times.
Okay, we'll take a look.
No, you take a look, because that's been going on for 9 years. We don't get the same response as anywhere else in town. And even once everywhere else in town is done, we still don't get response most of the time.
Okay, thank you for your input.
No, but now you're saying we're going to have all these extra houses, and those people are going to be trying to get out too.
Okay. Going to take the next person in line up top. So name and address, and try and be as loud as you can. The mayor has listening problems, apparently.
It's Rob Lovery, 70 Talbot Street. My house is located between Jumbo and the elevated park entrance. And first, a lot of the things that Sue brought up, I support 100%. I've spoken to a lot of the owners in that area, homeowners, and I'm the person who submitted the booklet for you guys to look at in regards to the photos. Parking is a huge issue, especially spring, summer, and fall when it's nice out. On the weekends, Friday, Saturday, and Sundays, there are at times 30 to 100 cars in that lot. And respectfully, no disrespect, but the owner of that property is also one of the owners of the elevated park. So there's something in there that I don't really know, but anyway, it's going to be a major issue. I've talked to some neighbors and, people, I've been there 4 years, and homeowners and business owners have had a lot of problems with people right now parking in their private lots going to the elevated park. And so when you remove the parking that, for whatever reason has been graciously given to that park, you're going to have, just short of a catastrophe. And then the other pictures in that booklet I showed you is the road conditions. I'm not sure, as far as the infrastructure in that area, because a lot of it, whether it's water pipes, et cetera, sewage, a century old, but the top of the roads, I don't think a lot of people considered the amount of traffic that would be going through that park at the level it's at now. And then you're adding 24 homes. Those pictures, like King Street is literally, it's not just an alleyway, but the condition of that street, Center Street and Talbot Street, Jumbo and Elevated Park bring you guys tons of tourism dollars. And the condition of those roads, it's not even potholes. It's literally, there's no curbs anymore. It's falling apart.
Yep.
And you guys are gonna, if this is all, and I've been told by some of the people, whether it's in planning or some of the counselors that, if this is shut down by council, it'll go to the province and it'll go through anyway. So at some point, someone needs to help this along or hold a hand to make sure that this is done fairly for the people that have to live in this area and put up with this. I mean, don't get me wrong, the park is beautiful. I think it's a great asset, but you have to do things right. And this is part of what planning is, right? You have to do it right, or else all the homeowners that are tax paying citizens, are going to suffer from this. And it's not fair. It's not fair to them. And that's pretty much all I have to say.
Thank you for your input. Did you want to speak? Please, you'll have to go to the microphone. Please. Just to help me here, Matt.
So it's Matt James, and I'm the owner of the property that's the zoning bylaw is being considered for. I just want to correct one fact that has been stated twice by two of the speakers up here. The Elevated Park is owned by a community-based not-for-profit called On Track St. Thomas. Yep. And I'm not an owner of On Track. And although I do volunteer there, as most people know. And so I just want to clarify that we're talking about the zoning bylaw application in front of us here deals with property that I own, and we're not dealing with property or any issues that are related to the Elevated Park. Thank you.
Thanks, man. I see a hand up online where I think the name is Grace. So if we can unmute you yourself, Grace, and then let us know your name and address, please. Are you speaking, Grace? Because we can't hear you from this end. You appear to be unmuted on my side. Try again. Okay, you're muted now, so unmute again and try again. All right, try now and see if we get you. I'm not hearing anything, Grace. We're going to try you again in a minute. We'll take the next person in line up at the upper mic. Is there?
I asked permission if I could.
Hey, you look familiar.
Yeah,
no.
Thank you. Just, when I bought my property, Matt introduced himself as one of the owners of the Elevated Park. So my apologies if he's not. But the other thing I want to say is he is on the board and at one point was the president of the board of the Elevated Park. So he is responsible for the decisions that happen with that park as well. So there is, in my opinion, a slight conflict, but that's just my opinion. That's all I wanted to say again. Thank you again.
Okay. Hey, Grace, want to try again?
Can you hear me now?
I can.
Oh,
excellent.
Good. Okay.
Let us know who you are and your address, please.
Okay, my name is Grace Penn, and I live at 28 Center Street. And I'm just letting you know that I've lived here for 32 years. And yes, it was a railroad at one time.
Yeah.
My concern is that we are the old section of town. And somebody brought up about the hydro and the water interruptions. That is going to have a big effect in this neck of the woods, because right now you have Walnut Street, that zoning area. A pipe broke down there. We were without water, and the water was shut down. And when it came back on, it was muddy for a whole 5-6 hours and then some. So are we equipped for this neck of the woods to take on that many more units?
Well, I'd ask Kevin to come back. You want it, please? I'll speak while they're approaching the microphone. We continue to look at what to do with Old Talbot Street. I've had more than one comment here tonight, and certainly comments on the street about how bad the street is on Old Talbot. We've been talking now for a couple of years about where it is next in the build so that we can not only resurface the road, which it badly needs, but to do the pipes and capacity underneath the street in that neighborhood, which would help us with the whole blocks around it. I know that you'd be the first to call me and say, what are you doing ripping up brand new pavement? Because if we went and paved the street this year and then next year or the year after dug down to put in new pipes, we wouldn't want to do it. So it's been on our radar of having to get done. And we're doing our best to keep Old Talbot Street as smooth as we can. And it's not, I get that. But in order to do the capacity of pipes, wastewater, and the rest of the servicing, that's what we're looking for over the next couple of years.
Okay.
I could be the new engineer. Worky, write this down. Yeah. Thank you. Do you have more, Grace?
Well, no, just that it would be a shame that I know that this summer, Steve Peters, he took a group of people down Center Street showing them our heritage down here. And there was about a good 30 to 40 people. And it took everything out of me not to stop and flag them down and tell them about what they were planning on doing, because it's a shame to, to bring in a whole bunch of brand new townhouses when you got this old section of town, and we're proud of what we have down here. And like Sue said earlier, we're becoming an apartment dwelling zone right now. And I know that there's a need for apartments for the homeless and for people that are in need. But I'm looking at other pieces of land, and I'm sorry, Matt, but there's a lot of people. I've lived here for 32 years, and I know you bought that property, but I was never approached to see if I wanted to buy that property. Maybe I would have wanted to buy that property, and maybe I would have made a park. I don't know. That's all I have to say.
Well, we'll see if Matt could take an offer from you.
Yeah, well, right now he probably would.
I'm just teasing, Grace. And I
Thank
saw
you.
Steve on here earlier. Steve, if you're on here and somewhere else, could you identify yourself and come on? I wouldn't mind giving you a chance to speak to this. Have I lost Steve? Do you have him anywhere on your list? Because I don't see him on mine anymore. Okay, well then we'll move on. Is there any other speakers up top? Well then, grab yourself a microphone and break into song and let us know what you've got to say. Name and address first, please.
Paul Donnellan, and I live at 10 Center, which is directly across from the entrance to the elevated park. I've been there for 7 years, and what I've noticed is that with the ongoing success of the park, Center Street has become a parking lot.
Yep.
More so on weekends, but it's very busy. And that is with the parking that people have created in the described lot. So without that parking, I don't even know what Center Street will become other than a big mess. So my main concern is if this development goes through, you are, not you, well, possibly all of us are creating a bottleneck at the entranceway to that park, which has cars, bicyclists, and pedestrians all over the place. So it seems to me that this is the point. This is the perfect point for a solution, because there is a vacant lot, and I understand it's privately owned. However, at this juncture, there's a solution out there that could take place that would create parking, that would alleviate, at least to some extent, a bad situation. And I guess my last point would be, if we as a city do not act now, that solution, I believe, disappears. And they're like, parking is going to be so far away from the entrance that we've just created a bigger problem. So hopefully we can act now to create parking that alleviates the problem and just improves the whole situation for St. Thomas. Thank you.
Thanks. Do I have another speaker up on top? Please go ahead, and I'll remind those online while you're coming to the microphone, if you'd like a chance to speak, please use your raised hand icon if you're on a computer or a tablet, or use *9 if you're on a smartphone, and put your hand up so that we can see that you're wishing to speak. Please go ahead up top.
It's Mara Scomperin at 56 William Street.
Okay.
My one question was about the 5 houses that right now use the back laneway. What happens when, do they lose their access to park behind their homes? And for the development, do they go in and out from King Street and Church Street? That's one question, and then I did have another one.
Michelle, can you answer both of those?
I can. So through your worship, so the 5 houses in the planning justification report provided by the applicant, it does indicate that they are looking to work with the owners to allow those individuals to have, some sorts of easements or continued access. I mean, it is private property, so the city isn't involved in terms of if there's any easements for access, et cetera. Those individuals may have other opportunities for access in other ways to their property, but, it's the city, we can't get involved in terms of easements on sort of the nature of those easements associated with the private property for their access from this privately owned property. And in terms of the access to the site is proposed at present. It's shown on the site plan as only being from Church Street. So it would come from Talbot to Church, and that's the point of access to the parking in the rear.
Okay, thank you. So that was another thing that I had mentioned with the Walnut development. If you could possibly open up Church Street, that would really alleviate a lot of give people options to use another entrance exit. But my one question, someone had told me that some of those houses would be able to use that laneway, but the one would have to put their driveway onto Old Talbot Street, and the city would pay for that. Is that true?
So through your worship, I'm not aware of any plans for the city to pay for a driveway. Looking at my engineering colleagues also are not aware of any plans for the city to pay for a driveway. I'm not sure if the owner would like to speak at all to any of this access, or if there's any further information on that, but from the city's end, we don't have any plans to pay for a driveway.
Okay, because these are just rumors that are going around, and I really don't want my tax dollars paying for someone's driveway that a developer has removed. I really think it's on them to do that, but there's just a lot of rumors going around. That's it. So thank you very much.
That's it. Great. Do I have someone else in line up there? Till I see another hand up online, I'm going to go to you.
Okay, thank you. I'm Jen Varga. I'm at 24 Center Street with my mom, Helen Varga. And we live in one of the oldest homes in St. Thomas. And our windows are almost the size of these doors. So people can see right through our home, and we're 2 women that need our privacy. My bedroom windows are up above the main entrance of the door. All the photographs, well, not all of them, but most of them, of the cars that you see parked with the elevation park activity, that's right outside my door. Your plans suggest that you want to build the highest unit right across from my front door of my house. And I am not going to feel safe when people can, I'm looking at people that are looking at me, you know, in a 3-story, and I don't even know why that has to be that high, right in front of my home. My home goes with the historical church. John Rowland was the sexton. He worked for that church. He's buried in the graveyard with 2 of his wives and 2 of his children. He built that home, and he owned all the property from church all the way to King Street, Walnut to Center. That was his whole block of land originally. So that's the history. And I, like, maybe you don't care about history, but this is one of my last homes. I'm in really deep trouble when my mom dies. I don't know what's going to happen to me. So this is very bad for me. It's really hard on me, and my windows are large. And when they put the first development in on Walnut, they put this huge transformer up on Church Street beside one of the older historical homes. And that house lost about 4 or 6 different people living in those apartment units in that house, because the transformer is right beside a huge pile of tall trees on the property, and it sparks and makes fireworks. And it did this in February, not that long ago, about 3 weeks ago, and all of my side of the street loses all its power. And this is what is happening with your development already in this area. This area cannot sustain more people moving in on the people that are already there, investing all kinds of money in restoration and to have their homes, and they don't have good drinking water, because we spent $20,000 to have this house for the first time hooked up to the city sewer. And we've already had it backed up since that other building went up. And I couldn't believe that thing sparking. I could see it right from where I was sitting in my living room. And it was nighttime and it's winter. If I'm in bed and you have these transformers, because you insist on cramming all these people in right on top of my driveway, like, I can't believe that they have access to the back driveway of the other people on the other side off of Talbot. And now it's so dangerous when people come to that park. Maybe the park is irrelevant to this right now, but it's not, because I'm living there and I have all these people on top of my front yard. You know, I have a whole pile of cars, and you have no curb. So my boulevard looks like a pig pen, because they decide they're going to park on the grass, and it's sinking down. How would you like to live in a home that's a doctor that was working for this area, a prominent doctor, restored the house, you buy it from them and you finish it off, only for this to be taken from you? I don't know what's going to happen, but I'm going to have to move my mother. I bought the house for its utilities and its easy access to stores, because my mom, I'm a primary caregiver for my mother, and my mother worked hard. She gave to a lot of people. Her and I were both born in Ontario, Canada, and, you know, my other relatives, they were the first immigrants from the 1600s. They're buried out by the ocean in Nova Scotia. And my mother's family, we just sold our farm in Elgin County, halfway between here and Windsor, 4 years ago. We had it in our family for 80 years. And this is what I have to live. I'm living in a house that was built in 1830. It was finished in 1839. And number 10 was finished in 1836. They were the two houses, neighbors, and then everybody else was built after ours. And, you know, you're ruining our quality of life. My mother's going to be 88 years old tomorrow. And I'll tell you, I'm going to have to move, and where am I going to go when we can't afford to move and stuff at this rate, you know? And I'm alone. I don't have any other help. My mother only has me, and I'm alone to look after her. And all of this needs to be considered. Those pictures of those cars, that's my front door of my house, and that is how excessive from the top windows in those pictures. You can see my, you know, I've already had like enough people looking, and I've had issues with people on our porch looking in our windows. Now I'm going to have to worry about people that don't even have to leave the building, and they can just look right across from me. Like, it's like I just feel like I have no rights as a citizen in this town having a home. It's terrible. And because I found this house that had all the utilities on the main floor, because my mother eventually won't be able to climb stairs. So, and I have to go out and find something else because you know, and then who knows, if we're sleeping one night, the whole area will go up like a matchstick. When we've got sparks, I'm talking fireworks out of that transformer. And nobody has been in that historical house. There's like 4 to 6 apartments. The place is up for sale. But as soon as those people moved into that other building, they were all removed. And, you know, this place used to be a place with a lot of people that lived, and they've had to leave. And the other guy sold. He gave his house away, and he raised his son there. He was the other guy on Church Street. He just sold it inside of a week. You know, a 2-story brick Victorian house with that old historical roofing. And, you know, he sold it for $430 just to get out. And because he knew this was going to happen. It's awful. Like, you know, and this is what I'm up against. Like, I don't know. And you're depreciating the value of our homes and our own investments. And some of the stuff I could tell you about some of the resource people through social services and how they talk about that neighborhood, and they put people down in that neighborhood all because there was a group home at one time. It's appalling. And now this, I can't believe this is where we are, me and my mom, after all we've gone through. You know, we've owned 5 properties, you know, since I've come back here from Toronto, and I can't believe that this is, you know, I can't believe it. I've upgraded this place, and so is Rob, who spoke earlier, who lives over by the park. Like, the man is doing amazing work. But the only view you can see of my house is very significant. It goes with the church. That's a museum. It may not matter to you guys, but you know what? It's been home to me and my mother the last 8 years. And, you know, it's valuable, you know, more than a lot of people might think. And when you put up this huge, bigger, you got to put up a taller one right across from my house. You're going to block the whole view of that house from Talbot. It used to be nice to be able to see my house. Nobody will see it now. And I have no idea where I'm going to have to go. But I'm going to have to move because I'm not going to be able to live with people looking at me all the time. I can't live inside a display window. I went through that on the north end of St. Thomas when they built up over there. and that was a newer home. And I got out of there and I moved to a house that had better installed windows and a better roof. And guess what? It's the old Roland house and it's solid. That thing won't come down because of how it was built. It'll take a lot to take that down. Of course, unless you have sparks and the trees catch on fire and the whole bush and that whole end of St. Thomas is up in smoke. And that's a hazard. And that really needs to be considered seriously. Thank you.
Thank you for your input. I have a online user meeting 1987. If you can unmute yourself and give us a try, give us your name and address, please.
Yes, it's Stan Gillum at 30 Center Street again.
Okay.
Okay, now a question I have is like, I know that I had to do a proposal to be able to have a second driveway in my property, and it all hinged on having enough front green space to allow me to have a second driveway. So now with these units going in, what is their setback going to be and how much green space do they have to have on their frontage? Because I had to have 60%.
Michelle?
So through your worship, there is a requirement in the bylaw that the driveway cannot exceed like 50% of the lot area, among other standards. None of those standards are proposed to be varied in this zoning bylaw amendment, so it would be complying with the zoning bylaw in terms of driveway width.
Yes, but what is their setback from Center Street going to be? Mine is 17 feet from the center of the street.
So their proposed setback is 1.7 meters from the lot line, but the parking is all located on the rear, so the driveway is off of Church Street.
Okay, so why can they get 1.7 meters where I'm looking at like 10 meters?
So the standard in the zoning bylaw is 6 meters. There is the ability to apply for variances from that standard. And part of the reason to apply for variances is to make other accommodations on the lot. In this particular instance, the applicant could, as previously discussed, subdivided the lot into multiple lots, and as of right, which we call without zoning bylaw amendments, have multiple driveways going on to Center Street, which there was the concern that would create some conflicts with pedestrians in the use of the multi-use trail. So staff worked with the applicant and encouraged them to relocate the parking off of a single driveway in the rear, and so that reduces the pedestrian conflicts on Center Street. So planning is, a lot of it's about balance, and sometimes things need to reduce or increase in order to accommodate, other matters on the site. So as a result of putting the parking in the rear, there is a reduced front yard setback, but usually, in the front yard is where you have the parking, but there's no parking in the front yard in this case. So it's a bit of a different function in the setback.
No, but what it does come down to is how close they're going to be to my house across the street. And like Jen just spoke about is, you know what? Because we've been here pushing 10 years. And, when they first opened the elevated park, there were cars from King Street to Church Street. And across the street from me, they were like 3 deep. We're talking like hundreds of cars. Now, it's not quite like that now, but they all needed a place to park. And even though they were all parked across the street like that, well, down our side of the street, they were parked between every driveway. And sometimes blocking driveways. And for us, it's fortunate we had 2 vehicles and 2 driveways, because at least we could get out of one. So, okay, why did they build the elevated park without allowing for appropriate parking without disturbing all the residents in the area. Okay, no, I'll rephrase that. Why did you, as our government, allow it to take place without considering how it would inconvenience the residents?
So,
Well, before my time, but the answer is people who own property get to come to a council like this and ask for change. And if you're a property owner, you can bring it here. We don't always say yes. We don't always say no. We often ask to work it out between neighbors, what could be better. I'm hearing tonight certainly about a parking issue that will develop with the elevated park, having to do with this being borrowed on somebody else's land for a number of years, but now not being available, and parking will be an issue. So this council will have to take that into account.
Okay, so what the council also have to take into account is if we as neighbors have to work it out together, then why do we need a council?
I don't understand your question, but
well, you're saying that we need to work it out with our neighbors to say, hey, look, you own this.
I'm saying we help neighbors work together to work it out.
Well, exactly, that you don't have to do anything to work it out, that we have to work it out amongst ourselves.
I understand your concerns, and we're here to listen. However, that's why we have public meetings, so we can gather the facts from you and your neighbors here tonight to say, here's what might work or might not work on this piece of property and the density that's being asked for by the owner.
Okay, so the elevated park has been there for a number of years now. And have you ever been involved with supplying parking for it?
No.
And I gotta ask, why not? It's donated land.
It's not a city park.
Well, actually, okay, then let's close it down and then we don't have to worry about parking.
Well, it's a private ownership situation. We love
That's irrelevant. It's irrelevant. If they got no parking, they got no reason to be open.
Okay.
Like a restaurant, if they don't have
your
any
input.
Patrons, they don't need to be open.
Okay, thank you. We have your input. Any more up top?
Thank you very much, Your Worship. My name is Paul Hind. I'm a planner with Strict Baldinelli Menez. Municipal address of Strict Baldinelli Menez is 1599 Adelaide Street North.
Okay.
First of all, I'd like to thank staff for a comprehensive review and assistance on this file over many months, where there's been very progressive dialogue to try to address a number of concerns and issues that arose throughout the time. My friend Michelle has been very professional in her dealings with Strict Baldinelli Menez, and I commend the entire planning team that you have before you with their professionalism and attentiveness and ability to have very appropriate dialogue to deal with issues like this. I'd like to remind Council that the public meeting tonight is to consider a site-specific development proposal on a site-specific property. We have heard of the elevated parks and the entire community with all sorts of concerns and hardships that individuals may or may not be encountering, which is a broader picture which isn't directly related to this specific parcel of land. As part of the submission of a full planning, planning submission, there were a number of studies that were submitted, and those included the environmental site assessment phase 1, the archaeological assessment phase 1 and 2, which we now have heard earlier this evening has received clearance from the minister, a traffic impact study, a servicing feasibility study, and a stormwater management report in addition to the planning justification report. Those documents were all submitted along with the application and the site plan to the Planning Department of St. Thomas, who reviewed those extensively and used them as the basis for formulating a planning opinion that was presented to you tonight. When planning is being considered for a rezoning, there are 4 very, very instrumental documents that council must have regard for when considering a rezoning application. These are the exact same 4 documents that would be referred to if this application is denied and appealed by my client to the Land Tribunal, Ontario Land Tribunal. The first one being the City of London has council-approved urban design guidelines. The planning justification report reviewed those in extensive detail and addressed every urban design guideline that is council approved to recommend the appropriateness of this development. Secondly, there's a provincial planning statement issued by the province of Ontario. That document sets out specific policies that one must have regard for to determine the appropriateness of development. Again, through the planning justification report, Strict Baldinelli Menez painstakingly assessed every single policy and provided a response and presented it in the planning justification report. We then have the City of St. Thomas official plan. Again, a document that has been approved and adopted by council, which outlines guiding principles and policies for development. Again, the planning justification report painstakingly reviewed every policy in your official plan and was able to respond of how this development conforms with the policies of the official plan. Finally, the zoning bylaw amendment. The zoning bylaw amendment, first of all, the official plan allows for a unit density of 75 units per hectare. That is your desire based on your approved official plan to have that density. We are achieving that, and we're also achieving it by fulfilling the goals of the provincial planning statement by maximizing development, intensifying development, utilizing existing services, and the list goes on and on and on and on. Finally, we have a zoning bylaw amendment. Yes, there are some special provisions being requested, but those special provisions are by and large part due to the fact that through dialogue with planning staff and our client, we agreed that it was most appropriate to have the parking at the rear. And so then thus we have the 1.7 meter front yard setback. We do have 24 units, but that's not 24 units set across the entire frontage of Center Street subject lands. The center block is a stacked townhouse, which still is below the maximum height permitted in the zoning being requested. A stacked townhouse, for those that don't understand the built form, is that there will be 1 unit and a second unit on top of that unit. So although it is 12 units in the block, it's actually only 6 units on the ground with 6 units above, not exceeding the height. When we look at the closing comments of the planning justification report, the proposal is consistent with the policies of the provincial planning statement 2024, which promotes healthy, livable, safe communities by accommodating an appropriate intensification of residential uses and recognizes the need for municipalities to accommodate growth in a cost-effective manner and encourage a range of housing types and densities. The proposal conforms to the City of St. Thomas official plan that recognizes the need for intensification and the provision of a variety of housing types within the urban settlement area. The proposed development is of a height, scale, and intensity which is compatible with the medium density residential development and the character of the surrounding neighborhood. The proposed zoning bylaw amendment would appropriately permit a mix of dwelling units that will result in a built form that is compatible, unique, and complementary both to the streetscape and the community as a whole. We know that there is a variety of housing type from apartments to single detached dwellings in and around this area. The old neighborhood, as some are referring it to, is not recognized as a special policy area in the official plan, and as such must adhere to and has the same regard given for consideration as the overall policies within the official plan. We heard a lot that this parcel is the parking lot for the elevated park. Yes, it has been through the graciousness of the client. The client could very well decide this year he's going to put up an 8-foot high chain link fence or some other type of barrier to protect his private property. The elevated park should, with the assistance of city, look at how they are going to address the need for parking throughout the city because of the popularity that the elevated park generates throughout the seasons. I'm surprised that it wasn't a consideration when the elevated park was ultimately granted, but it was a given that there's a large open privately owned piece of property where cars are going to park. Well, one might suggest that maybe those people wanting to use the elevated park might want to park on any one of the councilors or the mayor's yard. The property is privately owned. The development meets the 75 units per hectare. The parking, albeit extremely like 0.12 parking spaces, deficient. We do have municipal transit. We are walkable to the downtown, and the municipality is strongly encouraging alternative modes of transportation, walking and bicycling. I will answer any other questions that might arise, but I believe that most of the comments that have been presented to council tonight are in and around the same similarity of concerns and expressions. And again, this is a zoning bylaw amendment public meeting to consider a specific 24 unit, 27 parking space development on Center Street. It is not a public meeting to address parking for the elevated park. Thank you very much, Council.
Do I have anyone else above that has not spoken? If you haven't, please go first. I'm trying to watch now for repetition. We've taken a lot of facts in tonight, and we certainly are taking them all. So go ahead. Name and address first, please.
My name's Kathy Schaefer Moyes. My address is 76 Talbot Street. That is the corner of Old Talbot and King Street. My back property will line up with the proposed housing.
Yep.
I just want to go backwards a bit, and maybe Matt can clarify this. Elevated Park is owned by a limited company, which I believe Matt was the vice president, Serge was the president, Matt stepped in as president. So there is some sort of connection here. That I know for a fact. My issue is not the elevated parking, the parking in general is my issue. I have a fairly large parking lot that has 12 spaces, and every single day I have issues. I have signage, clear. People just don't always choose to see it. So we're already, with my business and my home, we have a parking crisis. My neighborhood has a parking crisis. The roadways, and I'm going to be repetitious because it needs to be said, are not slated to be fixed, we heard, for over 20 years, if not longer. I had heard that the residents, the builders at Walnut Street were responsible for doing the sewage and that for that project to go forward. I would like to know if that is so, and if it is so, is that going to be the same case where we will get our infrastructure able to hold that almost twice as many residents as we have now? We have 30. We're going to add another 24 plus who knows how many people, dogs, children who need a place to live, and we're bottlenecked. So that's what we're very bottlenecked. So I'm asking, one way in, one way out, that many people, we're already dealing with horrible parking issues. And like I say daily, am as well. On a Sunday, everybody assumes we're not open. They can park there. It's my home as well. It's my home. And if I got clear signage and it's being ignored now, I don't know how this is going to make it better. And when you talk about one lot, 6 properties, and asking for concessions, I can understand adding more than 6, but I certainly do not understand the wisdom in a bottlenecked area of putting that many residents. That's what I have to say.
Thank you.
Oh, I had to ask one more thing. Matt, my property goes right up to Matt's property line. When they put my asphalt in, I want to know how that is going to be handled. The back parking is right up to my parking. How do we make sure my parking lot doesn't become a throughway for the residents there? I want to know how I'm not going to have a larger problem.
Okay. Yeah. Michelle, do you have an answer to that, or is part of the record that we will need to verify that or look at that?
Yeah, so through your worship, this would be required to go through site plan, and that's, there could be potentially some fencing or what have you used to separate your property. As an adjacent property owner, you'll be circulated on the site plan application and have an opportunity to speak at the public meeting for the site plan. But your concern is noted. We'll note it in our follow-up report. And but yeah, I mean, matters of trespass are a legal matter too. Between landowners, but yeah, certainly something, if you wish to have some separation that could be looked at through site plan.
Okay. Next comment, and please, I'll be watching for repetition. We've been here a while tonight, so go ahead.
Yeah. So the land's privately owned. Who's going to maintain the buildings? Are they rentals or are they going to be sold as condominiums? Who's going to be owning them and responsible for the grounds? We already have a lot of litterers and stuff with public people showing up with the park, because the park is a huge part of it, whether you like it or not, because people use the land right now for that. So I'd like to know how that, what to expect with that. What are these units? Who are they for? And how much is it going to appreciate the value of our properties with our eco-structure being disrupted and stuff, with all the points that I've made so far, and what happens if there is a huge, these blowouts with more hydro boxes blowing up and stuff and sparking. We have tons of really tall trees there too. So I'm just wondering, because I didn't really actually ask that question.
Well, I guess the question asked, is it rental or condominium? Or do we have it till we get to planning? We're not sure.
Yeah, so through your worship, whether or not it's rental or condo isn't something we regulate at the zoning bylaw amendment stage. If they ended up wanting to make it a condo, they could submit a plan of condominium application, and then that would need to be reviewed. But this is sort of before that. We can't regulate who lives in a unit or whether or not it's rental or condo at this stage.
Great.
Okay, and so what's going to happen if we have a fire and we lose our homes?
Well, I think our great fire service would come and report. So, I mean, I can't really think of hypothetical tragedy, but I can say that we put in place all we can to ensure servicing is there for anything that is brought forward to us on a planning application. I can say no more than that.
Thank you.
We have one more comment.
Promise it's not repetition. It's Robert Lovery from 70 Talbot. I just have one question regarding the architecture of this development, I'm not sure what was involved with Walnut Street, but at some basic level, the architecture or the style sort of respects the heritage of the area. And I'd like to know, if that's going to be respected in this area, because, some of the people have brought up points about heritage, et cetera. And I understand development and you need more housing and all this, but, if respectfully, if it's built with architecture that assimilates heritage type buildings, I think it might be a little easier for everyone. But again, you guys know that more than I would. That's all.
Well, let's get an answer to that. Michelle?
Oh, no problem. So through your worship, the property staff would be recommending, should council pass the bylaw, that a holding provision be included requiring a heritage impact assessment. That heritage impact assessment would look at what's required for the site as it develops to be compatible with the adjacent heritage resources. So it would look, architectural design similarities could be something that are looked at. Site plan now typically doesn't regulate the facade of buildings, but when there's the heritage impact assessment involved, it is something that would definitely need to be a consideration and could be secured through the site plan in that regard.
So you guys would know more as far as what happened with Walnut Street and the things that took place for that to happen, because from what you're saying, basically you don't have a lot of control over that. So I want to know, or I think the owners in this area at the very minimum would like to know, if anything, there is some strength or power from you guys to be able to ensure that at a basic level that happens. Because the last thing we want is like basically a concrete or a stuccoed, like block. I know aesthetics might not be the thing for everybody, but at the end of the day, when you're bringing in all the tourism you bring in, and that are going through this little part of town, it would be very respectful to not just those homeowners, but to the heritage of your own city, that people can sort of like recognize that yeah, these are new buildings, but at least they were done. Because when I walk by Walnut Street, I actually say, well, at least they kind of look like they kind of fit in. So anyway, that's all I'm saying.
Yeah, so on that so typically, the facade of the building isn't something that is looked at through site plan, but because there's the heritage impact assessment, and that needs to be approved, showing that there's no negative impacts on the heritage resource, that actually would become a consideration through the site plan and is something that we would be looking to secure through that process. So the requirement for the holding provision for the heritage impact assessment helps to ensure that anything that develops on that site is compatible with those heritage resources.
Okay, I'd like to suggest that the public and the council has been given a fair opportunity to express their views regarding this proposal. You have one more?
Hello, my name is Helen Varga, and I live on 24 Center Street.
Okay.
And I have worked very hard on a farm in Rodney till I was 18 years old. Then I moved to Oakville, worked in a factory there for 9 years making light bulbs. Then I worked at I come back to London and I worked at Northern Telecom. And now I'm back here in St. Thomas, and I love this house we're in. It was old. It's old, but it's lovable. It reminds me of our farmhouse that we had. My mom had 15 children, and they were from Budapest. She had four kids come from Budapest, and 10 of us born in Leamington, Ontario. They used to work at the ketchup factory, which Trump took away. And it wasn't long ago I was there to see my mom on her grave. And she had us all on the farm. Most of us, there was 10, no, we were born in Leamington. She had 4 in Budapest and 10 in Leamington. And then we moved to the farm. I was only 4 years old when we bought that farm. We had it for 80 years. in this house that we have now. I have moved so much and worked so hard all my life, and you just want to take it away. Why? I am really angry at all of you down there. Because you got money, we're poor people. That's all I got to say.
I will say that everyone's been given a fair opportunity to express their views, many more than one time. Okay.
We know what they're doing. Now we're going to lose the value of our house. Who the hell wants to live on top of us? I was sick of that.
Please be advised that any person wishing further information on the actions of council regarding the passing of a bylaw for the proposed amendment should email customer service at customerservice@stthomas.ca, indicating which public meeting, this is the Center Street public meeting, they wish to be notified on, and provide their name and address. For those that don't have access to a computer and wish to be notified, you may call customer service at 519-631-1680, extension 0, and provide that same information. This meeting is now concluded.